Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. I'm Rick Walker. We had a bit of a technical glitch there. It looked like we were broadcasting and we weren't, so we are on a little late, but better late than never. And it is an important broadcast tonight. We're going to look at the ICC possibly issuing an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu. We are going to take a look at the tornado situation in the USA, and Kevin Michelizzi will join us on the other side of this to give us new information regarding the mysterious death of Russell Texas Bentely, an American who went to Russia to fight for Russia. I'll be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
We are also going to share highlights from CPAC Hungary later on in the broadcast, but first let's bring Kevin Michelizzi back in. Hello, Kevin. How are you, sir?
Hey, I am doing pretty good for 2:20 in the morning. So
yeah,
after seeing you, about 18 hours ago?
If that. So I'm glad you're able to come back because I know you have new information about the mysterious death of Russell Texas Bentely, who was an American fighting for Russia in Ukraine. Well, so I'm just going to rewind a bit because I know Lori has been covering this story, but I know you also have some, contacts that are extremely valuable here. And just to explain to people if they've been missing the coverage so far, who was Russell Texas Bentely?
Well, Russell was a man who was born and raised in Austin, Texas, and was always, from what I understand from him, a bit of a troublemaker, and always spoke things as he saw them, which did not always serve him well in life. He worked as a logger for a while. He was in the U.S. military, and got arrested for driving a bale of pot across the state of Minnesota for somebody. And in 2014, when the conflict started between Ukraine and their people in the breakaway republics of Donetsk and Lugansk, he actually saw a video of a little girl that had been blown up by an artillery strike, and she had lost her legs, and she was laying there and asking for somebody to help her people. So this struck his heart, and the man had a big heart and would do anything for anybody. This ultimately was his downfall as well. So he hopped on a plane, flew to Russia, crossed over into Donetsk, which at the time was illegal for Americans to do. And he picked up arms and fought side by side with the Donetsk People's Republic Army. They were not part of Russia at the time. And he fought in Spartak, he fought at the airport. And for those who don't know, back in 2014, 2015, those two areas of Donetsk were absolutely level. They were not, for a man his age, it was not easy fighting. They were not easy battles. And, lots of death and destruction. So Russell did fight side by side in 2022 when Russia annexed those two republics after they recognized them as independent republics. Russell automatically aged out of the Russian military. So he went to doing propaganda and fighting propaganda for the Russian Federation on the Donetsk front.
So here's a picture of Russell, and that's him standing there.
With his
Is
wife.
that with his wife? Okay, and I guess he must be at the gravesite of a friend of someone.
Yes. Guy considered a hero of Russia.
Okay, and the death of Russell Texas Bentely, very mysterious. He died, as you said in our earlier conversation, April 8th. He was abducted April 8th, right?
He disappeared on the 8th. They didn't know if he was abducted, killed. There had been an artillery strike. He and his wife were renewing some documents at the city administration building, and there was an artillery strike by, I don't know if it was artillery or a rocket strike nearby. And Russell immediately dropped what he was doing. This just kind of shows his heart, and went to see if anybody needed assistance. And his wife waited. That was about 4:15 in the afternoon. And about 6 o'clock, his wife was real worried because he hadn't come back. The administrative offices were closed. So she went looking for him. And they had parked down at a car park down the street a ways. And she found his car there, old white Niva. And in the car, what she found was his broken cell phone, his sunglasses, and his hat.
And in fact, we have video of that broken cell phone. I'll just run it right here.
Yep.
Это его телефон. То есть можете сами представить, как его с ним обращались.
Very odd to be
Yeah.
broken in half like that.
Is what I'm told is that the phone was destroyed because they thought he may have been taking videos or photos that could have been used as evidence in the future. So it was left behind. What you actually saw there with her showing the broken phone is her and some friends took the insides out of this phone. They took the memory out of it and everything. They installed it in a new case with a new cell phone innards, and they actually recovered the phone. Now, there was nothing taken that could be used, nothing that told them anything. The man literally ran into this. They didn't know if he was killed by another missile strike. So that was the initial thing. That's when the rumors in the West started coming out that, he was captured by Ukrainians. He, had body parts taken off of him, and just stuff that I reported on and talked to Lori about that, was just speculation and PR from,
And this is new. It's making headlines in some circles. It's getting some traction online, of course, because he became a bit of a media personality online, doing a lot of interviews, even with some Western media. So he had some profile. That's why there's so much attention surrounding his death.
Yeah, and like I say, he had no filters whatsoever. Um, he would do these interviews, he would say it like it is. I recorded several interviews with him. I only aired a couple of them after heavily editing them because I myself have to be relatively careful about what I say living where I do. And, but he spoke out, initially for the Russian army, then against it. And speaking against the Russian army is not a great thing to do in this country. He spoke out about, Putin and Shoigu. And like I say, he had no filters. And, it's my personal opinion, this probably caused him problems in the end. The whole story still isn't known.
Yeah, it's well, that's the thing. He's like he went to fight for Russia, but then he ended up criticizing the Russian military. So
he actually went to fight for the Donetsk army, and later he criticized them because he felt that they weren't supplying the guys in the DPR with the equipment that they were given the Russian forces, didn't feel they were getting the support from the Russian Air Force, the artillery guys. So these are some of the things that he talked about.
Yeah, I do have a clip of him here. I think it's okay to run this. I think it's been run on our channel before, just to give you a little taste of Russell, Texas Bentely.
It's Tejas on the front line with the denazifiers and liberators of Ukraine. These guys are tough, these guys are ready, and there's plenty of them. So far, Russia has used about 10% of its military power, and we're getting ready to bring the hammer down. These guys are going to save and liberate all the good people in Ukraine, and the bad people, boom, kick their ass.
Typical Russell. That was a couple of years ago. When he disappeared, he had much shorter hair, a little more clean cut. But, those were his honest opinions at the time. They changed after a while. He was supported, supposedly his wife, by the Wagner guys trying to help find out what happened to him. But, I also have interviews with him where he was not great friends with the Wagner guys either. He thought that they fought hard when they fought, but that they were kind of slacking off in the back. So these were his opinions, and, just stuff I couldn't air.
Obviously. So where are we at with it now? So was it Ukrainians? Was it the Russians? I'm hearing all kinds of things out there, but bring us up to date.
Well, up until yesterday, there wasn't a lot known about what went on. Like I say, his wife found his car. The next day, the car was missing from that parking lot. And nobody knew where it went. A lot of rumors. Yesterday, they're on his Telegram channel, because his wife had recovered his accounts on his phone and everything. She was actually posting on his Telegram channel. It drew my attention to it after he disappeared, and I contacted her because I said, Russell's been active, and that's when she explained to me that it was her posting these things. She's actually an English teacher. So, there were a lot of questions and comments. The Ukrainians took him, the Russian forces took him. he was killed in a secondary strike. Reality is, yesterday nobody knew, and as late as yesterday afternoon, they were, it had been posted on his Telegram channel that they're getting lots of questions from people. They didn't know, nobody had seen his body. They still weren't sure that he was dead. So they have been making pleas to the Russian military to look into it. I've actually known some of this stuff for a couple of weeks, but wasn't at liberty to talk to it because it's an ongoing investigation. But they went to the leadership of the Donetsk Republic. They started climbing up the chain. I actually brought his story to a couple of the heads of different regions in Russia that I know. I spoke to a couple of Duma members, the head of information for Donetsk, and nobody could find out anything. So his wife finally made a plea to Vladimir Putin. It was a very short and sweet message. It simply said, "My husband has disappeared. I don't know if he's dead or alive. If he's dead and it was Russian military that did it, just tell me and let me know if they made a mistake. If he was, whatever, return his body to me." And she says, "Because I know if I make a plea to the president of Russia, something will happen." And within a matter of a day, they actually got a response about his death and what happened. So I got this from her just today, and it went public a little after that. It said, "News has just arrived that puts an end to the question of whether Texas is alive or dead. He was killed by a group of werewolf extortionists in uniform from the 5th Tank Brigade based in Petrovka." An explanation for people, a werewolf is what they call somebody who was Ukrainian, took Russian citizenship, fights side by side with the Russian military, or is a civilian that lives side by side with other Russians. And we have these all over the country. They're in, every region. We have a lot of them in Crimea. There's a lot of them in the breakaway regions. Petrovka, this tank brigade, is actually based in central Crimea. So today, Ludmila was officially informed about the death by a representative of the military prosecutor's office who had flown down from Moscow after she made an appeal to the president. And she says the matter was taken up at the top, and here is the first result: recognition of his death. So he was detained. They detained the people who did this. They got confessions of the kidnapping and the murder. And what happened is they actually, after they stole his car, they put his body in it and they burned it. And so was he burned alive? Was he dead? Nobody really knows at this point. But, he was killed by Russian werewolves, as they call them. Now,
Russian
the commander
werewolves.
the commander of this tank battalion took responsibility for the people under him for these actions. So this is, he was not involved, but this is the kind of military that Russia actually runs. They're very, he was the leader. He took responsibility.
What?
So these guys are in jail right now. They're still being investigated, and they will be prosecuted.
So I'm still having trouble understanding what the real motivation was here. Do we have any idea what the motive behind this might have been?
Not really, but knowing these people they call werewolves. My wife had one as an English student not too long back. An elderly man wanted to learn English so that he could move to Canada, be your next door neighbor, Rick. He was looking at the house next door. And he was a perfectly normal student for, about 6-7 weeks until he approached her one day and said, I'm very pro-Ukrainian, and Ukraine is going to come in. They're going to liberate Crimea. Which side are you on? Because if you're not on the Ukrainian side, you're going to get your throat slit. So let's leave it at, he was arrested that night for starting a fight with his neighbor violently and, whisked off to a prison somewhere. Whether the fight happened or not, we don't know, but we did report it. So.
Wow. Dangerous business over there.
Yeah. So it's people who are, they're pro-Ukrainians who are hiding amongst Russian people to pull off terror attacks, basically. So if I was going to guess, and from the knowledge that I have, this is exactly what it was. Russell was a very big mouthpiece for Russia. Extremely big in the Western news, big over here. I see a lot of people in the West talking about his death and decrying the fact that the United States government, the only thing they've said is they have heard of the death of an American. Millions of Russians have been following this, posting comments on his Telegram and VK accounts. Lot more interest from Russians in what happened to him than Westerners.
Yeah, well, I think with the circumstances surrounding his life and his choices, I can understand why the United States might not take a whole lot of interest in his well-being or his death. So that makes sense. And honestly, I mean, I have not touched the story that much simply because I didn't really, there was so many strange things surrounding it. I was having trouble seeing what the facts were. So beyond just sort of reporting on it, I've just been giving it a very light touch, not dealing with it a lot until now. And Lori kind of, giving it a lot more coverage. So I was, being given
and
due
part of
course
that
there.
is people who had facts like myself actually couldn't share them because of the investigation. So like I say, I've been in contact with his wife on a very regular basis. She was holding out hope. She was even holding out hope a couple of days ago when I last talked to her. And, it's what she needed at the time. And like I say, it's something that I couldn't confirm. I knew about a week and a half ago.
So these guys are in jail. Any idea how the legal proceedings will roll out?
No, because it's a military court. I see two options for these guys. Either they will be, put in prison for life for being traitors, or they will be released under the command of their leader to go back and fight on the front in Donetsk, in which case, they won't know which guys are shooting at them, the Russian guys or the Ukrainian guys, maybe both. They will have a life expectancy of a pedophile in prison.
Yeah. Wow, what a story, and it's not
strange
really
one.
yet. It is very odd. I I told Lori the first time, I became aware of Russell Texas Bentley, he made me nervous just because it was like he's surrounded by so much violence, and I could feel death instantly as soon as I became aware of him. Like he was just surrounded by war, surrounded by violence. And as much as he seemed like a really nice guy, I didn't know him, but it was like, ooh, this guy is like hot. They're scalding hot.
He was. Like I say, I've got several interviews that I could not air. There were things that I was uncomfortable enough with that I passed them by federal security here. And they said, well, you can air this if you cut this out and cut this out and cut this out. And the interviews basically became, hi, Kevin, bye, Kevin.
Right, that's right. Yeah. Oh, man. Anything else you want to add on this story before I ask you about this next thing?
Nope. That's
Okay.
all I can say on it because that's all I know at this point.
Yeah. And Benjamin Netanyahu, the ICC, I guess they're looking at issuing arrest warrants for him and a bunch of other top Israeli officials. What do you make of that?
I make of it as the same thing as them filing cases against George Bush and Vladimir Putin and the whole other litany of leaders that are not members of the ICC.
Right.
They seem very adept at, issuing warrants against people who are not members of their organization. It means in theory that they can't enter any member state without being arrested. But we saw how that, was playing out with South Africa about a year ago when Putin was going to go to South Africa for the BRICS meeting. The South African president said, I'm not going to arrest him. We have good relations with Russia. I'm not going to arrest him. And of course, it caused him political issues. But, another toothless dog barking, I think.
Yeah, the ICC created, I think, back in like 2000. I think I don't know how many countries exactly belong to it. 120, 122, 100, something like that.
Yeah, 123, something like that.
It's interesting. Canada is a member of the ICC. I think they were about the 14th or 15th country to sign on. I think it was largely a virtue signal. And and now it's coming back to bite Justin Trudeau on the butt because they are also going after him. The International Center of Justice for Palestinians is planning to file petitions with the International Criminal Court seeking war crimes indictments against him and 3 other leading Canadian officials. This stuff, I don't know, these... the U.S. not a member of the ICC, Russia not a member, Israel not a member, Canada a member. Oh, man.
Yeah.
And they had a news conference about 2 months ago, and there was a Palestinian organization with a lawyer who went to Ottawa, held a news conference, and they're also going after him, filing paperwork with the ICC. I think of all the leaders, the poster boy for the ICC and the WEF and the WHO and globalism and Klaus Schwab and George Soros, I think that guy might actually be in trouble.
Yeah, because, hey, Canada will have to arrest him.
That's right. We'll be obligated to because we've signed on.
Yeah.
So
these other guys, what is it for them? They just can't go to ICC countries. So, George Bush hadn't, you and I looked at this a while back. George Bush hadn't been to Canada since he was charged. So
that's right. And there was, if he comes here, will Canada arrest George Bush? Highly unlikely.
Highly unlikely.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. So I mean, I kind of see the trajectory on this, and you have a lot of, really third world countries who are members of the ICC, but they're trying to give the ICC some credibility, but it's been largely, I would say, a failed institution. They haven't really done, I mean, what have they done? Not a lot. They've gone after
The ICC, the ICJ, the UN, what have any of them really done?
Yeah, not really a whole lot. I mean, they went after Slobodan Milosevic, I think, in Yugoslavia. They had some success there, but then after that, they kind of went after, I would say, kind of low-hanging fruit with some African dictators. They haven't really produced much in terms of convictions. What purpose do you think the ICC actually serves? Any at this point?
No, absolutely none. It's that same international law. And what is international law? It's what basically the United States says it is, that they themselves don't follow. So,
right, because they're not even a member. And
that's the interesting thing is they claim they define international law, and yet they aren't a member of the court.
Yeah, I watched a couple of pro-Israeli live streamers, bloggers today. They describe the ICC as sort of an anti-Western organization, but when I look at the leaders that the ICC has gone after, it includes Vladimir Putin, so it's not just anti-Western. It's an odd little court, is what it is.
I think they're taking that stance because they consider themselves part of the West, and of course, South Africa took them to the court.
Right, that's right. Yes, they did. They did indeed.
If they had won that case, then they would be the best court in the world.
Now, also, I want to pick your brain on this because I'm seeing reports here in the West, in Canada today, that Ukraine has strategically retreated, and they are facing increasing frontline pressure along like a full 1,000 kilometer or maybe longer front line, with Russia kind of mounting pressure. What do you make of all of that?
It's interesting that you're just seeing this coming out over there right now. It, lets me hold out a little hope that, maybe some journalists in the West are starting to wake up. This collapse along the front line has been going on for a couple of weeks now. And Russia has been moving through village by village. They're taking, 2, 3, 4 villages a day over there. Now, sometimes it's 100 yards, sometimes it's, 1-2 kilometers, which is considerably fast in a ground war. And Russia has been pounding them pretty heavily ever since Ukraine used their brand new ATACMS missiles that they got from the United States before the funding was approved to provide them ATACMS missiles and before the decision was made to provide them long-range missiles. So they made an attack on an Air Force base in Crimea. All but 2 of the missiles were shot down by air defense, and 2 of them caused minor damage at the air base. But, after that whole terror thing in Moscow, Russia has finally said enough is enough, and they're just pushing through. They've been striking very, very heavily Odessa and all the port cities along the coast. So it's looking like Russia will probably push through to those areas. That's speculation on my part, which I don't like to do, but this is what all the signs say. They have been hitting Kharkiv very heavily for several weeks now. They have left the city in the dark. many times. They have hardly any electric generation capability there. Dnipropetrovsk, they've been striking very hard. So all the way down the Dnieper River, they've been really hitting things and hitting them hard. They've taken out something like 17 to 20% of the electricity grid in Ukraine. They destroyed, I don't know if it's all of them or almost all of the thermal electric power plants in Ukraine. So they have very limited capability to generate electricity at this point.
So that puts pressure on just the general population, which will need support from the government, just in terms of resources to survive, and then in turn that puts more pressure on the military, because you have to protect the population while at the same time continue to try to fight the war. You need energy to run a country, basically, and fight a war.
Yeah, and probably the battles you're hearing about over there is yesterday and today they've actually they've created a cauldron around a couple of the we call them villages here, in the West we would call them small towns or cities, populations of probably 15-20,000 civilians when the civilians were there. Now, Russia's typical tactic is they start flying drones over. They, will strike some military facilities in the region. And their goal in doing that is to warn civilians that you need to leave. And civilians have been evacuating for several weeks now. Mm-hmm. So, what they're hitting at this point in the cities, even though the cities are being, taken apart, is, Ukrainian military or people who weren't bright enough to leave. So I think it's just going to increase.
So we're looking at now this aid package, $61 billion from the U.S., plus whatever additional support is coming from European NATO allies. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole lot of money being dumped into this still, which, I'm just going to make a brief comment here. Since the beginning of this conflict, we've had people on this program. I see other programs running predictions from a variety of experts who keep saying, oh, this is going to be over in 2 weeks or a month or 2 months, or as soon as the ground firms up and it's frozen and the tanks can roll in, it'll be all over. And here we are like 2 years later, and it's still dragging on. But even with this $61 billion, we've just seen now Russia saying this past week that Ukraine, and the number they're providing is Ukraine has suffered about 500,000 soldiers lost.
Yep.
That is the resource that Ukraine is in short supply of, in my view. So that's going to potentially be either the deciding factor or the pivotal factor. And when I say pivotal, I mean if the war continues, they need to do something to bring in more boots on the ground. So where do you see that going?
Unfortunately, they have just passed a new mobilization law in the last week that was signed by Vladimir Zelensky. And Ukraine, much like Russia, has 3 levels of disability. You've got, people with major diseases, you have people with cancer, and then you have guys missing limbs and wheelchairs, things like that. And they have removed all 3 of those levels as exceptions to the draft. So anybody between the age of 18 and 60 in Ukraine, anybody, men and women, are now eligible to be drafted. So they have changed their banking system, so you cannot bank unless you're registered at the military office. They will not provide you government services in Ukraine or abroad unless you're registered for the military service. So they're turning up the pressure on their people, which of course demoralizes people. With the losses at the front, the military is demoralized. You know, people there, from the reports, from the people I talk to there, the people that are left don't want to fight. Many women are there who don't want to fight, but they stayed there because a Slavic woman will not leave her husband for anything. You know, younger ones, yes, they're the ones who fled the country, or people with money, but you know, women who grew up in the Soviet Union will not leave their husband. If I was stuck here and forced to fight, my wife would not leave. This is why Russell's wife, you know, has stuck with him so long. It's just the nature of the people. So now the women have become targets for the military induction commissioners. They haven't been bringing women to the front forcibly, but they're running out of guys. They're bringing disabled guys at this point, or at least the disabled guys are eligible.
And we're also seeing that Ukraine is removing consular services for Ukrainians who are in other parts of the world. So the objective there, according to the policy change, is to essentially pull young fighting age Ukrainians back in with passport renewals. And if your passport is about to renew, you can't get it renewed. You have to go back. So
Yep.
that's another thing they're doing.
Yeah, and their politicians are now speaking out vocally on their news. We can actually get their broadcasts here. But they're talking about the fact that they're putting a time limit on that as well. People who refuse to come in and renew their passports, even if they aren't due for renewal and they're overseas, if they don't come in by a certain date, they will basically pull their citizenship. And I said, if you don't want to come back and fight for your country, then, you know, become a citizen of another country.
Well,
I think we're going to have a lot of stateless people running around.
I understand.
Oh, hey, but this one will get you. They still do have exceptions to having to serve in the military. If you're the son or daughter of a politician, a policeman, or somebody that earns above a certain income level, basically, you know, the salary of an IT professional on up. So people with money, politicians, police, their children are exempt
I wasn't
from
aware of
military
that.
service
Really?
and these laws.
Well, boy, I'd like to ask some questions of maybe some Ukrainian officials on about that. That would be an interesting conversation. Well, yeah, it seems to me, though, that with this aid coming in, even though the numbers of soldiers is diminishing, we've still got a ways to go before this war comes to an end. Would you agree or not?
I agree. You know, I've seen analysts say by summer, like you said, by October, 3 months, 6 months. I don't think it's going to end that quickly. But again, that's an opinion, and that's the life of an analyst. You make, you know, educated guesses.
It's kind of like being a weatherman, right?
Yeah.
It might rain, it might not.
I hope a little more accurate than a weatherman.
Yeah. Do you see any scenario where NATO countries send soldiers in?
No. I don't think it'll happen. None of them really want to fight Russia. And I think you're seeing that division in NATO and the EU continuing now. I think as more of these countries have elections, we're going to find more politicians that do not want to be involved. I mean, they pressured, what was it, Greece to provide Patriot missiles, and they said no. Germany agreed to send Patriot system, one. The United States had promised to send 7, but then backed out of it because they don't have any or have enough. So even the United States is backing up on things. I think the graffiti is on the wall, and a lot of people are seeing this, and they're making a lot of, political talk about their support without actually providing it. I think they know the state it's in.
How do you think this is going to play out against the backdrop of the U.S. presidential election? What is it that Biden thinks he needs here? He doesn't want to lose. He needs this to drag out at least until after the election. How do you see it?
A lot of people said that Biden wanted to run as a wartime president. I don't think that's the situation at all. I think what it is he already has Afghanistan that's blamed on him, the pullout there. And with all the promises they made about, we will be there for you forever, Ukraine, we will supply you with everything you need, I think the whole thing for Biden is to not have another Afghanistan on his hands before the elections.
I don't see a clean exit for Biden on this one.
Me either. But, what can we say?
Unless there's a peace deal brokered.
And you can't broker a peace deal if you refuse to invite the Russians.
Yeah. Do you think
somebody in the chat was asking
yeah.
how many people killed in Ukraine were Canadian mercenaries? I don't have a number for that. Can't really tell you. I know there have been some, but Russia blew up a hotel very close to Odessa that was filled with NATO mercenaries and leadership just last night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I know that the early days of the war, or special military operation, however you want to phrase it, there were recruitment efforts made by Ukraine trying to get people from other countries to come. They targeted Canada as well with that information campaign to get Canadians to come. We saw many Americans going over to fight as well. Many news stories done on people, climbing on planes to head over to Ukraine to fight. And I mean, I have to be honest. I wasn't comfortable with it. I don't like to see that. I didn't want to encourage anybody to go and fight in a war. And even with Russell, Texas Bentely fighting on the other side, that made me very uncomfortable.
It wasn't his war to fight. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like,
for me, it's no different than getting, one country getting involved in the election process of another one. Mm-hmm. It just isn't their business. Stay out of it. Initially mercenaries were offered big money to come and fight. What you have now is a bunch of guys who are very much like Russell. I just want to go fight. And, you have to question the motivation for that.
Well, I'm still praying for peace, man. Like, that's where I'm at. I feel so badly for the people of Ukraine. I feel badly for the Russian soldiers who have been injured or killed in this conflict, for everyone. The whole thing is a gigantic disaster, is what it is.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't see a peace deal coming soon either. Nobody's including Russia. All the talks are, well, let's negotiate the occupied territories. Let's, after we have a peace deal, we will negotiate. And Russia has stated over and over, I mean, almost on a daily basis now, that we can't trust the West to negotiate in honesty. We will not stop until Ukraine is ready to lay down their arms, and we will not give up any territory that we're already in.
Yeah, I mean, I do try to see both sides or all sides of every story that we cover. So I understand the mindset, I think, from both sides. But where I'm at with it right now, at this particular moment, is it seems to me like this would be a really good time to stop, because Russia, Putin seems to have the territories that he really, really wants. I don't think he has any desire to control the entire country. He probably doesn't really want to. So it would be a great time for both sides to come to the table and,
Yeah,
just say, let's stop here.
Reality is Russia doesn't want all of Ukraine. Economically, it wouldn't be feasible. Fighting the terror cells for the next 20 years wouldn't be feasible.
Sorry, I think we lost Kevin there, and it seems like he froze up on the internet. He'll be back in just a moment. There he is. You froze up there, Kevin, for just a moment.
Yeah, I was saying that, he basically has the areas he wants, the Russian-speaking areas.
Mm-hmm.
And, but even with that, right now, I don't think he'll stop unless he gets Kharkov and Odessa as well.
Yeah, and that's what Trump is saying too. He says he could end this thing in like 24 hours, I think is what his statement was. And I mean,
yeah, and I'm having dinner with Vladimir Putin tonight.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, is there anything else you'd like to add tonight, my friend, before we sign off with you?
Well, I did see the leaked plans.
Oh, right. I forgot to. Yeah, thank you. Almost forgot.
Hey,
about
no
that.
problem. So I got this from a Ukrainian source who has since, put it out publicly. I won't say how this information goes out because Ukraine is trying to close them and some other outlets that receive this information down. But the instructions, the introductory instructions for the units of the armed forces of Ukraine for what they're calling Operation Crimean Bridge. They don't have as much creativity left as the United States or other countries do to give it a cool name. But the plans have been received from, as the source says, our partners. And they're planning a combined strike using sea-based and aerial drones, ATACMS missiles, and Storm Shadow missiles to launch against the bridge. And, even as the Germans have said, it would take a lot to take down that bridge, other than an extremely lucky strike slipping through. But this source said that it is viewed that it will be necessary for them to expend all of the long-range missiles transferred by the West. And then, based on the evaluation of the German military, this will put the bridge out of action for 2 to 3 months at most. It'll destroy roadbed, which Russia has gotten very adept at replacing very quickly. And, they still run traffic across it. And although it would be a pain in the butt for people like me that want to go to certain regions of Russia, we now have a land bridge up around through the newly annexed areas, and they'll have a high-speed train running up through there as well. So, it'll partially disrupt the holiday season here in Crimea, but, based on that, it won't affect the course of the hostilities in any way. It'll just be a loud and expensive PR campaign for the West in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And Ukraine will expend a lot of resources, receive minimal profit, and overall, this will turn out to be a huge problem and miscalculation for the Ukrainian political leadership. The only thing that, experts can't say right now, including myself, is what Russia's response will be. But it will increase the stakes of this game very, very much. In my opinion, the most likely thing is that they will reduce Ukraine to having, more than 70% of their electricity generation and distribution sites taken out. Ukraine will be deprived of its gas trump card. People may not know, but they are still an important transit line to get Russian gas from Russia to Europe, and they have the largest underground gas distribution system in Europe, and they're filled, and this is what they've been providing gas to Europe from, and that likely will be destroyed. Russia's actually made some hits on that already. I expect they'll take out the railways. Bridges may be destroyed up and down the Dnieper River. And, it's likely they'll hit the bridges with something very large and powerful, like these 2,000 kilogram bombs. They've been dropping 2,000 and 3,000 kilogram bombs for, you Americans. That's,
Wow.
like 6,000 pound explosives. And, and they'll take them out in one explosion, and then they'll start hitting the ports again, which they've been doing anyway. So overall, life in Ukraine will become worse and more difficult for their population, and the sad thing is the Ukrainian authorities know this, but they will continue to conduct this at the instructions of those who pay for the conflict, and the ones who sit back and watch, as my contact called it, the show. So, for the authorities in Ukraine, the civilians are just a PR tool.
That bridge, they keep hitting that bridge. There doesn't seem to be a lot of military value to it or strategic value other than just the optics, the public relations aspect.
Yeah, there is no military value to it whatsoever. Russia does not haul arms across for the forces that are based here. They take them up through the new territories. Much safer and easier to bring them through up that way than it is to bring them across a bridge. I have never seen a military truck on the bridge. Last time we went to the mainland, I told you I saw, train cars loaded with air defense and, some other weapons, but basically they were there to, sent there to protect the bridge.
I've noticed, the way that bridge is constructed, it's a heavy duty bridge. I mean, it's really robust. So when they designed that bridge, do you think that they had possible attacks like this in mind?
I really don't know. I mean, it's possible because, after all, Ukraine was, jumping up and down then that it was illegal for that bridge to be built. The hostilities with the eastern regions was already going on. So it's quite possible, but that bridge was designed by a Westerner. I don't remember what country it was from, but
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up for you one of these days.
Yeah, it's just I looked at that when I was just looking at it. It's really, really heavy duty. Just the design of it.
You cannot imagine. And this is why it's so quick for them to, redo destroyed sections of the bridge. That bridge is built in sections, literally on giant beams, and they put them together on the shore, They pave them and everything, and they just roll them on out and drop them in.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, very intelligent design and engineering.
Yeah.
Very modern, for sure. Kevin, thank you, sir, so much for tonight.
My pleasure, Rick.
Yeah, any
Always
final
glad
words?
to be here. Nope. You
We've
can
got
find me. One of
Right
these days
there.
I'll figure out which hand is which. But yeah, you can find me down here if you want to follow us. And we talk a lot about life in Crimea in general. So.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Folks, I shall return on the other side of this. And thank you again, Kevin. Fantastic analysis.
Thanks.
I appreciate it.
Bye.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
The information war is raging. Truth without integrity is worth nothing. Maverick News. Because those who have power and those who seek it must be held accountable.
The world is watching.
Join our family of truth seekers. Donate today and add your voice to the chorus of Maverick Knights. Donate at maverickdonations.com. Truth. Integrity. It's the Maverick way. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
Okay, so yeah, we will be revisiting all of this stuff about Israel, Palestine, Gaza, Iran, and Ukraine / Russia in the days ahead. And I'm going to try and get you a fuller perspective throughout the week. So stay tuned for all of that. We'll try to get more information for you. And for a fuller perspective on the geopolitical situation and the shift, I would say, in the political mood globally, all you have to do is take a look at what is happening this weekend over at CPAC, Hungary. Over there, we have a number of high-profile conservative speakers, including Eva Vlardingerbroek, who is a conservative pundit Dutch. And she is saying a lot of the quiet parts out loud. This speech from her, I won't run the whole thing here, but her address at CPAC Hungary, going viral online. And I would say the progressive left, socialists, I don't even, the progressive left for sure, their heads are blowing up after what she had to say as they're becoming aware of her comments at CPAC Hungary. Here she is.
Hello, Hungary. Hello, Budapest. Hello, fellow Europeans and American friends. Thank you so much for having me. Allow me to skip formalities for a moment and dive right into a subject that is not so cheerful, but very, very necessary to discuss. Let me walk you through the past 7 days in Europe. This week in Stockholm, 3 elderly women in their 70s were stabbed in broad daylight on the streets. In London, 4 people were stabbed in a time span of just 42 hours. In Paris, hundreds of African migrants took to the street to riot. And in Brigalow, also in France, yet another church was burned down to the ground. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is just a few incidents in just a couple of days on our beautiful continent. But we all know that these incidents aren't incidents anymore. If there's one thing that's for sure, it's that we know, and our governments also know, that there is a link between mass migration and crime. In the Dutch city of Dordrecht, something interesting happened the other day. They announced, and this is a small city in the Netherlands, in my home country, that a new asylum center will be put in that little town. And what did the municipality do? They said, we are going to offer citizens who live in the vicinity of this center €1,000 to take extra safety measures. Our new reality in Europe consists of frequent rapes, stabbings, killings, murders, shootings, even beheadings. But let me be clear about one thing. This did not used to happen before. This is a newly imported problem. Samuel P. Huntington predicted this over 25 years ago when he wrote, and I quote, "In the new world of mass migration, the most pervasive, important, and dangerous conflicts will not be between the social classes. They will not be between the rich and the poor. They will be between peoples belonging to different cultural entities. Tribal wars and ethnic conflicts will occur within civilizations." Well, boy, was he right. And the worst part is, we as a society seem to have become indifferent to it. When another white boy or a white girl dies at the hand of an immigrant, we might shake our head, we might let out a sigh, we might even get angry for a minute or two, and then we go on with our lives. We offer the family thoughts and prayers, but nothing ever changes. Ladies and gentlemen, what does that say about us? This is a response of a society that has already given up, a society that has already accepted its defeat. But is this true? Have we given up? Do we really accept the new reality that our globalist leaders have in mind for us? I know one thing for sure, and that is that if nothing changes, if we don't start to seriously fight for our continent, for our religion, for our people, our countries, then this time that we live in will go down in history as the time in which Western nations no longer had to get invaded by hostile armies in order to be conquered. This time will then go down in history as the period in which the invader was actively invited in by a corrupt elite. And not only did this corrupt elite invite the enemy in, they made the native population pay for it too. Everyone who has eyes can see it. The native, white, Christian European population is being replaced at an ever-accelerating rate. Let me back this up for you with some statistics from my home country. Let's take Amsterdam, the capital. Amsterdam currently consists of 56% migrants. The Hague, 58% migrants. Rotterdam, almost 60% migrants. And of course, most of these immigrants come from non-Christian, non-Western, African and Middle Eastern countries. Conclusion: the Dutch population is already outnumbered in the majority of our cities. But let's look onwards. London, 54% migrants. Again, conclusion, native population outnumbered. Brussels, color me shocked, 70% migrants. Conclusion, native population majorly outnumbered. And other Europeans will of course follow suit soon if they haven't already. So I'm going to draw the forbidden conclusion here. The Great Replacement theory is no longer a theory, it's reality. And what's interesting about replacement is that the establishment will either deny its existence, or when they admit to it, they say that it's a good thing that the native European population is soon no longer a majority on its own continent. Dutch national disgrace and dubbed climate pope Frans Timmermans already stated in 2015 that diversity is humanity's destiny and that Europe will be diverse. And of course, by now, I think we all know what they mean with the word diversity. It means less white people, less of you. Imagine this in an Asian or an African country. Imagine their leaders rejoicing in the fact that their people will soon no longer be a majority in their own country. Absolutely unthinkable, unimaginable. So what in the world is wrong with our leaders? The underlying sentiment of what they say is always the same. Our establishment claims that white people are evil and that our history is somehow fundamentally different from that of others. Consciously or unconsciously, they have sucked up the lies and the anti-white dogmas of the neo-Marxist critical race theory. That's why the totalitarians in Brussels are trying to force you, the Hungarian people, a sovereign nation, to accept immigrants despite the fact that the population has said no, and so has the government. But make no mistake, the majority of the Dutch people haven't asked for this either. Just like Brussels is forcing Hungary to accept these hordes of immigrants, they are doing the same now, even in the smallest of towns in the Netherlands. No part may remain Dutch in the traditional sense of the word. No part of Europe may remain European. And it's not difficult to understand why. If the old Europe still exists in certain places, then people will be able to compare the new Europe to the old, and newsflash, they will prefer the old. That's why the Eurocrats hate Hungary so much. And their message is clear. Our way of life, our Christian religion, our nations, they have to go, without exception. Their vision of the future is the neoliberal, unrecognizable Europe, where every city becomes kind of like Brussels. Ugly, dirty, unsafe, zero social cohesion, where the buildings are constantly under construction and they never ever seem to finish, and even when they do, the end result is uglier somehow than what they started with. And what are we left with? A permanent state of isolation, confusion, and disorientation. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the New World Order.
And we'll pause that one there. We'll come back. I have another highlight from CPAC Hungary on the other side. Stay with me.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Here's Geert Wilders, the Party for Freedom, a Dutch politician at CPAC, Hungary.
How are you, Budapest? Jó napot, kedves konzervatív barátaim! Good afternoon, CPAC. It's great to be here. And I'm very honored to address you today. Last November, the world witnessed the rising of the Dutch, the rebellion of the Dutch electorate against the ruling establishment. My party, the Party for Freedom, more than doubled its seats in parliament, and we became by far the biggest party in the Netherlands. And today we are negotiating, forming a new government. And I hope that will succeed. So please allow me to say some words to the Dutch press, because they are very nervous today. In the Dutch newspapers, opening with national newspapers, even on the 8 o'clock news and other news programs, they all say that will Wilders kill the negotiations by speaking for CPAC today. And I have to disappoint them. I will not do that. Because winning the elections, becoming the biggest party, comes along with a big responsibility. And the responsibility I have is to my country and to my people. So to the Dutch press, if you're only interested in that, please go home. My friends, a lot of people ask me, how did we do that? Win the elections in Holland? And I'm here to tell you. But let me first emphasize that we are standing on the shoulders of giants. Not just Dutch giants. Heroes as Pim Fortuyn or Theo van Gogh, both murdered in my country as martyrs of freedom. But also some of our and your heroes, such as the great Ronald Reagan, who in 1974, exactly 50 years ago, gave the inaugural speech at the first ever CPAC meeting. And much has changed in the last 50 years. Much has changed for the better, such as the liberation of Eastern Europe. But much, unfortunately, has also changed for the worse. New and serious threats have emerged. And that is why CPAC is still necessary. Indeed, it is more needed than ever. Winston Churchill, another giant of the West, once said, and I quote, "Courage is the greatest virtue because it guarantees all the rest," end of quote. And Churchill was right. Courage leads to bravery, and bravery is the prerequisite for victory. And that, my friends, is exactly why I have come to Budapest. To encourage you, to call you to bravery, to support you in your way and your route to victory. And I am extremely happy by doing so in Hungary, the country of my beloved wife Christina and the country of my dear friend Viktor Orban, who I just met. Prime Minister Orban is a brave leader who proudly stands for his country and the Judeo-Christian values of his people. He protects Hungarians against illegal immigration. And I wish more European leaders would follow his immigration policy today. And that's really necessary, because I believe there are two great existential threats that we are facing today. One is internal and one is external. First, there is wokeism, cultural relativism, the predominant idea in most of the academia and media that there are no objective truths, no loyalty, no freedom, no nation, no family. Everything to them is subjective. Everything is relative. Everything is interchangeable and without value. And that is the message of the leftish elites. They, the left, have sold so many countries out when they were in charge. They have eliminated their national sovereignty. They sometimes even wrecked its economy. They abolished its national currency. They destroyed its farmers. They ruined its middle class. They perverted the education of children. And last but not least, they have opened our borders for mass immigration and immigrants from an entirely different cultural background. And that brings me to the external threat, which is demographic. The writing is on the wall. The population of Africa is bound to quadruple its present 1.4 billion to almost 5 billion by the end of the century. And 1/3 of them wants to move abroad and come to Europe. And in the past 50 years, governments have inundated us with mass immigration. Often not real refugees, but unskilled illegal immigrants and fortune seekers. Today, many of them are young, single men, not only from Africa, but also from Asia. And these immigrants do not benefit our societies. They cost us money and are an enormous strain on Europe's welfare system. Europe indeed today is facing an enormous immigration and asylum crisis, because despite the massive cost, mass immigration was never discouraged. On the contrary, mass immigration was encouraged, seen as an enrichment by cultural relativists. Look around you. But luckily, not in Budapest, but look around you in the most of Europe. There are neighborhoods that have almost become no-go zones, territories where our women and daughters are no longer safe, and our Judeo-Christian values have totally disappeared. Look around you, and you can see people waving the flags of Hamas and Islamic Jihad and shouting anti-Semitic messages in many European capitals after the massacre of innocent Israeli civilians on October 7 last year. And it's no surprise. The Arab Center of Research and Policy Studies shows that 67% of the Arab world consider this barbaric massacre legitimate. My friend, 2024 does not only mark the 50th anniversary of the first CPAC conference, but also the 20th year that I lost my personal freedom. 20 years ago, in 2004, I had to flee my home because Islamic fanatics put me on their death list. For 2 decades now, my wife and I have been living in army barracks, in prison cells, in government safe houses, under 24/7 police protection, only in order to stay alive. Why? The reason is that I dare to criticize Islam. Mullahs and imams have put many fatwas on my head to kill me. But we never give in to totalitarianism. We never give in to violence. We never give in to death threats. Our freedom of speech is sacred, and we never ever compromise with the truth. Never. And the truth is that many European nations today are overrun with more and more illegal immigrants and asylum seekers. More than we can handle. So why did we allow this? Why have we not stopped it? Which people have voted for this ridiculous policy? Why did politicians all over Europe refuse to do their duty and speak out against this madness? My friends, in the 1955 inaugural issue of National Review, Bill Buckley famously wrote, and I quote, "A conservative is someone who stands throughout history yelling, 'Stop.'" And here, my friends, we get to the heart of the matter, the explanation of the great electoral success of the Party for Freedom in the Netherlands. Unlike other parties in the Netherlands, we had the courage to stand throughout history and yell, "Stop." We dare to yell, "Stop." We have always said the truth, never stayed silent. We have stood by our people, and we always will. We have never abandoned our beliefs, and we never will. My party has always refused to follow in the mold of politicians such as the French President Macron or the former German Chancellor Merkel and many others who opened their borders, impoverishing and endangering the people and diluting Europe's Judeo-Christian and humanistic culture and civilization. We have always defended our people. We have constantly yelled "stop" at the bureaucrats in Brussels when they wanted more and more federalism and less of our national sovereignty. We yelled "stop" to the wokeness which politicians out of the West try to impose to the common people and their children. We have always yelled "stop" to their open border policies. And now, finally, sick and tired of being ignored, sick and tired of the trampling on their values and everything they hold dear, the Dutch people cried, "Enough is enough." They said "stop" at the elections. They said "stop" and they flocked to us. Almost 25% of the Dutch voters, 2.5 million people, backed us because they understood that we and we alone have always been on their side. And here is my message to you, brave conservatives, who are standing throughout history, yelling "stop." My message to you is that if you yell "stop" at its ridiculous policies, millions of decent, good citizens will join you because they have had enough, because they want to save the future of their children and live in dignity in their own land. And that, my friends, is why you should take courage. Continue the good fight. finish the course, keep the faith, realize that you stand on the shoulders of giants, and be the champions of the truth. Because, as George Washington once said, and I quote, "Truth will ultimately prevail where there is pains taken to bring it to light." I believe in our mission. I believe in our people. I believe in you. Together we have the strength of masses, cultural conservatives who defend national sovereignty, who defend Judeo-Christian values, are today on the rise in Europe, getting stronger and stronger every day. And we will continue to force to stop illegal immigration. And we will, I can promise you that, as long as good conservatives, if we yell stop at the right moment, the people will follow us and we will win more and more elections. Good luck to you, and thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Interesting. The tone this year, different. There's more confidence. It's a harder line. Things that even within conservative circles were considered too sensitive, too politically incorrect to say out loud, now being said out loud. It seems that when push comes to shove, some people are already shoving back. And obviously, we need to watch it very carefully, because you're getting pushback from the two sides of the political spectrum. And I don't know if what I'm about to say will make sense to you, but it's hard to distinguish at some points what you're getting, because you're getting overlap. People from the left, people from the right, sounding the same, minor variations, some differences. What are we ending up with here? I don't think George Galloway really fits in with this crowd, and yet much of what he says sounds the same, but at the end it isn't really quite the same. And in fact, if you look at what someone like, say, George Galloway advocates for and is now, pushing for, he's pro-Palestine. He's, I would say, as much as he's complaining about immigration, he's supporting immigration. These guys, not so much. These are conservatives, right wing. It's getting complicated, more complicated by the day. But you stick around here, and in the days, weeks, months, and hopefully we have years ahead, we'll continue to try to make sense of it and get you all closer to the truth. We'll bring you more of that when we come back right after this.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarmingly, some media outlets simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
In an ocean of lies a century deep, the truth awaits. Choose not the red pill. Choose not the blue pill. For both are an illusion. Discover the power of M. The power of individuality. We are Mavericks. We are the way to the light. Fear not the storm. Join our quest for truth. Truth will set you free. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, let's just touch on this story about the tornadoes. 2 days of wicked tornadoes ripping through many parts of the United States. So we have at least 4 killed in Oklahoma since yesterday. These storms ripped all the way through from where Missouri through Texas. Heavy damage in Oklahoma. I know that it cut a swath, the storms cut a swath all the way up to the Great Lakes. And even here, all this distance away, we had heavy thunderstorms overnight as a result of this massive weather system that has left devastation in its path. And I know that last night, for those of you who were watching Strange Bedfellows here on the Maverick News Network, Lori on with us live, and she had to run for cover. That was at least 3 times, maybe 4 times during the broadcast. She had to leave to go to her basement because of tornado warnings and real devastation overnight, man. I have some footage here. So, yeah, this, look at this. This is just huge. Look at the size of that twister.
Oh my God, please.
Second day of this kind of weather. Wow. The power of Mother Nature, man. Here's a still shot. Look at the size of that.
Oh, please no.
Yeah. So this was Iowa.
Oh, please no.
And as I say, 2 days of this. Yep. 2 days of that stuff. And we're just grateful that there wasn't more damage, and that we didn't have more people injured or killed. And I'm glad Lori is safe tonight. And, you have to remember, too, that Lori went through a real hard time there not so long ago, last year. Lost the roof on her house. And very disruptive for her life, very painful, obviously. So, thinking of all those folks down there, especially in Oklahoma. And I know the Red Cross has been down there providing relief. Here's some stills. This is the CNN report. And they have some still images that I can share with you here. This happening overnight. Wow. Nothing left of that building. Trees toppled. Look at that. First responders on site just turned that thing into just a pile of rubble. That building. The forecast for today's storms right there.
A dangerous storm situation right now in Nebraska as tornadoes have been confirmed on the ground, and a powerful storm is moving toward the city of Omaha.
Yeah, I don't want to run too much of that stuff, probably copyright issues, so we won't bring you that whole thing there, but you've got the gist of that one too, and just powerful images. And powerful storms. Back to politics for a moment. We're getting information out of Washington that is coming from U.S. intelligence officials who are saying tonight that Russian President Vladimir Putin likely did not order the death of Alexei Navalny, who was imprisoned, opposition leader, who died just before the Russian presidential election. So that's what the U.S. officials are saying now as they've looked deeper into this, making statements to the media. In fact, this report really coming from Associated Press, being picked up by mainstream media across the West tonight. Navalny, 47 years old. He was the most prominent and persistent of Putin's political opponents. Died February 16th. He was in a penal colony above the Arctic Circle. Exiled, if you will. He was there serving a 19-year sentence on extremism charges. Navalny always insisted that the charges were politically motivated. He'd been behind bars since January of 2021. And as much as the U.S. intelligence officials are saying that they do not see or have not found any indication that Putin ordered the death of Alexei Navalny, they are saying that Putin was, in their words, ultimately responsible for the death because he endured brutal conditions during his confinement. They say the intelligence community has found no smoking gun, that Putin was aware of the timing of Navalny's death, or that he actually ordered it, but because of the conditions he was forced to endure while incarcerated, they're saying that ultimately Putin bears some responsibility for Navalny's death. Interesting development, though, in the headline it is, and the revelation or the discovery or, I guess, admission, however you want to phrase it, bottom line is they're saying Putin did not say, hey, you do this. He didn't order it, which I think is significant. We heard during those speeches out of CPAC Hungary references to churches, Christian churches being burned. And this is something that I had hoped to share with you a couple of nights ago, but we really sort of ran out of time during the broadcast. But I'll bring it to you now because it is connected to those speeches. And this is a church in Canada that was burned to the ground. Where did I go? I have the video for you. I had the video for you. I will find it. Here it is here. So this is a church in Bridgetown, and it was 100 and I believe 30 years old. And it is now a pile of rubble too, damaged. Here it is. I need to get rid of that music that somebody added to this footage. So this is in Bridgetown, Nova Scotia, forcing traffic on the community's main street that day to be rerouted. It was constructed back in the 1890s. It's going to be a total loss, obviously, and fire crews are there for a long time pouring water on it. So the congregation talking about rebuilding. Nothing left. But devastating for the congregation and a real blow to the community there. It's under investigation. And we've had, I don't know how, let me just check here. How many churches have been burned now across Canada? At least 100 churches now have been vandalized or burned right down, desecrated in one way or another over the past, 2 years, I guess? Or since, well, actually, this really ramped up after 2021 when the whole, that story about the mass graves, which were not really mass graves, but when that whole issue hit involving residential schools, and that ramped up, and that was 2021. So we've had well over 100 churches damaged or completely destroyed over that period of time. And you really don't hear very much about it. The politicians don't say much about it. And in fact, you heard liberal politicians coming out at the time, and New Democrats like Jagmeet Singh, some of them saying things like, well, you can kind of understand why someone might burn a church down. And we showed you surveillance footage about 3 weeks ago of another church that was attacked by an arsonist. We had the footage of someone wearing a mask, dumping gasoline all over the front of a church and then setting it on fire. So it continues, it's ongoing. Very disturbing. And obviously, the divide is still there, which means we are in for a rough ride, folks. Brace for worse. That was the headline just a couple of nights ago here on Maverick News, and it applies again this evening as well. Brace for worse. Brace for worse. And pray and hope for peace. Folks, that's going to wrap it up for us here tonight. I appreciate you guys spending your evening here with me. As always, great to have the Maverick family back. I will return tomorrow night. And what's tomorrow? Monday? Yeah. Start of a whole new week. And I'm going to work on getting a few guests on in the coming week. If I get the people that I'm hoping we'll get, it should be very interesting over the course of the next 5 days. So really looking forward to it. And again, thank you all. Love you. A privilege, as always. Catch you tomorrow on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.